Hello and welcome to our second session with Lisa Levasseur from Internet Safety Labs. After the last time, it was genuinely very eye-opening, and I personally learned a lot from it. And I'm using the term product safety a lot more than online safety. I'm very careful about product safety governance for digital products. And this time, Lisa will talk about that public laws usually govern the behavior of people and organizations, but what about products when they behave with increasing autonomy and unpredictability? Future's coming. Some will say it's already here, and regulation has not really made us safer. So, what you're going to talk about today is a contemporary product safety governance model for digital products. So, I'm really looking forward to that. Pass over to you.
Thanks, Angeline. I think you're overselling it, as you'll see. This is really the critique of how the past has looked and how the future, the present is looking, and how the future needs to look. I think we'll get into really practical stuff in a third session, a bonus session, if you will. So thanks so much for that beautiful introduction. I'm going to start sharing here. Let's see. Okay, I think I just want to share the. Can't even find it in the list. I'm going to share entire screen because I can't find the thing. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, thanks for being here. And don't worry if you missed the first one, because I'm going to do quite a lot of review today. So today's objectives are really, I want to spend some time disambiguating a lot of terms that are kind of very active in the world: safety, cybersecurity, privacy, cybercrime, product safety. How do we make sense of all of this stuff? So we're going to spend a decent amount of time kind of teasing these things apart and understanding the relationships and the, sort of strengths and weaknesses of some of these terms. I want to look at product safety governance in the past, sort of pre-digital product safety governance. And from that lens, I want to look at what is different for digital products and how it needs to change, and how, quite simply, I suggest we are not currently doing it right. So that's the objectives for today. And as promised, we're going to start with a review of digital products. So as I mentioned last time, digital products exhibit 4 key characteristics. They're software driven, they're connected to the internet, they have a user interface, and they traffic digitized information. If you are of a certain age, young, you might think, what isn't a digital product? Because we are seeing these capabilities being driven into so many products. But this is really, these qualities distinguish what I refer to as the digital product category. And within that product category, there are lots of subcategories like computers and mobile phones and smart TVs and connected appliances and smart home and vehicles and apps and wearables and so on and so forth. So these are the 4 things that a product has to have to be deemed a digital product. We talked last time about how products harm consumers, and there are really 3 sort of avenues for how we can be harmed by products, any kind of product. It can be because of the ingredients of a product. It can be because of the behavior of a product. And it can also be if a product is weaponized. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time elaborating on that just yet, but that's really how we spend some time looking closely at that, and we will look deeper in a moment. So digital product ingredients. What are ingredients when we're talking about digital products? I introduced 4 kind of 2 broad buckets, 4 kinds of digital product ingredients. The first ingredient is really software. And we have first-party components and third-party components. That's one type of ingredient that goes into digital products. The rest of these 3 ingredients have to do with data or information. And so we've got personal data, we've got product metadata, and we've got packaged content, which can be user created, like in social media platforms. It can be commercially created, like white papers and video content and all of that kind of intellectual property. And then finally, we have synthetically created packaged content, which is a new sort of emerging and challenging thing for law and regulation to wrap their collective heads around. So these are what I propose, and I do want to underscore that. What I'm proposing with all of this is just that. It's a proposal. I suggest that we need better language. We need a little bit more precision in how we describe and talk about this stuff in order to regulate it more efficiently. And so I offer this as language, more precise language and more precise framing on how we can look at this stuff. So is it right? I don't know. I've been, contemplating this and working on this for a long time. We've been 8 years at this at ISL. But, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't bring that to this. So this is offered to the community as let's come up with something that we can all agree to. So I want to highlight here that in these ingredients, we have ingredients really that can be harmful just by themselves. And we might consider these, I deliberately put some provocative language in here, we might consider these to be product defects. So some of this packaged content could be harmful. Some of the third-party components, we see malware in our testing quite a lot. These can be harmful things. I'm introducing two terms here that I'm going to use quite a lot. Oh, whoops. One more harmful ingredient here. The first party can also be harmful. We do see this sometimes, it's very unclear who the first party is. And sometimes that can be a bad actor. So the other term I want to introduce here is weaponization and weaponized ingredients. These terms, hang on to them because we're going to come back to harmful, hazardous, and weaponized shortly. But what we start to see here is that, personal data, we're absolutely seeing this flow out of the product into sort of bad actors' hands through data brokers and other entities and become weaponized. Product metadata like analytics can also become weaponized, as can the packaged content, right? We have the non-consensual nudification content, synthetically created content. And the more I sat with this slide, the more I sort of realized that just about everything could have a yellow and a red circle around it. It could be harmful and it could be weaponized, really. But this allows us to start really thinking about that and framing that and factoring that into our product design. We also talked last time about product behavior and how that can be potentially hazardous or harmful or weaponized. And I propose that there are two observable behaviors: interaction with human users and communication with non-human entities. And then there is one internal unobservable behavior, and that's computation and transformation of digitized information. We know it's happening on processors. We don't actually witness that. But these other two we can witness, right? But this first one, we all witness when we use technology and we're interacting with digital products. And the second one, the communication in and out of the product and sometimes within the product can be observed using special tools and whatnot. So the harms and the risks with the interaction we talked about last time, this is where we get into deliberate manipulation, deceptive patterns, addictive patterns in the user interface. That's the kinds, sort of exemplar harms that we get with the interaction behavior. And then with the communication with non-human entities, this is where we can be subject to privacy risks with data being shared with unintended or unexpected entities. So just coming back to this I want to overlay this hazard, harms, and weaponization or crime language because we're going to keep coming back to that. And when we're talking about ingredients and product behavior, we're really dealing with language that has to do with risk of hazards, risks of harms. And when we come to weaponization, we're dealing with crimes, or what should be crimes. And maybe the law isn't quite there yet, but maybe we'll get there. So this hazards, harms, and crimes really become the kind of units of dangers that we're interested in with any kind of product, but also with digital products. And so some of you may have seen this slide. We've been using a variant of this for many, many years to make sense of this landscape of the kinds of dangers that digital products present. And so on one end, we have sort of the hazardous or harmful product behaviors or ingredients. And then on the other end, we have harmful human behavior using the digital product in a harmful fashion. And so this is a kind of a loose landscape. It's not really a continuous spectrum. It was just presented this way and we've kept it this way. So on the one end, we've got design-based hazards and harms, and on the other, we've got cybercrime. And we've got a lot of things in between these two ends of this sort of kind of spectrum. We have proposed some language here of programmatic harms, harms that happen to people using a digital product when you use it as it was intended to be used. Internet Safety Labs originally was focusing almost solely on these harms. And last year, something happened where we realized we really needed to be measuring and presenting more of the risks related to these other things as we progress from left to right on this spectrum of dangers. So now ISL is looking at, assessing the software behaviors that contribute to all of these harms. And we're going to talk more about that as we go. And there's one thing I want to point out about this. I was thinking about this yesterday, and I realized that when we think about identifying the software behaviors, there's two layers of this. There's visible product behaviors, and that's largely the user interface, as I was just saying before. But there's also invisible product behaviors. And a lot of the privacy risks are invisible to people. And we started off, and a lot of you might know this, but our safety labels that are viewable in appmicroscope.org, they really are designed to surface those invisible privacy risks. Where is your data being shared with? So it's interesting to contemplate. And certainly as we expanded and we've been building a safety label 2.0 that progresses more into some of the other kinds of dangers in the spectrum, and they definitely get more into visible product behaviors. So this is another way to consider the kinds of risks and dangers that we see in digital products, and some vocabulary of hazards, harms, and crimes. We're going to come back to that. Okay. Now I would like to talk about disambiguating some often related, sometimes conflated terms. So the objectives of this section is I want to disambiguate safety and product safety. I want to characterize the relationship between safety and cybersecurity because we see an awful lot of conflation between these two terms. And I want to clarify how privacy and cybersecurity fit into digital product safety, and also how cybercrime fits into digital product safety. And this is not just a semantic or syntactic or any kind of like semantic exercise. It's really, the purpose is so that we can have more precision and clarity and cohesion of how we talk about digital products, so we can regulate with greater precision and impact. And because ultimately we want to ensure accountability. So all of this language, we're also going to be making some observations about how does some of this terminology relate to accountability, and how does it hamper holding the right people accountable? So hopefully some interesting food for thought as we go through this. So safety. Safety always means human safety. When we say this, it always means human safety. And I want to invite you to take home these concepts, think about them, and see if it makes sense and if it's true. Maybe I don't have it quite right, but I believe safety always means human safety. If we're talking about animal safety, we say animal safety. If we're talking about environmental safety, we talk about environmental safety. When we say safety, we're talking about human safety. It's always a human reference point. And it's the most abstract concept, right? It's the highest level, most abstract concept in all of these terms that we are going to explore today. I'm also going to point out this somewhat nuance that safety usually implies personal responsibility. And I invite you to try this on at home, catch yourself when you say safety. I feel like there is a sense of, what do I need to do to keep safe? And this is an important little nuance, I believe. And I believe it's important. And it's also why I don't use safety without the word product in front of it. So product safety is concerned with the innate risks of a product. And, it can be a particular make and model. It can be a defective single, instance of a product, or it can be an entire category, right? But we have some pretty obvious ideas about product safety. One that is maybe less obvious is that when we say product safety, there's an immediate sense of manufacturer responsibility. ISL has done quite a lot of research around this. We have a paper from 2024 where we surveyed, I forget how many people, a lot, 1,000-ish. And we asked them for their ideas about product safety for non-digital products and product safety for digital products. And I'm not going to spout off all of the statistics. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. I will say this, people strangely think that they have more accountability for product safety with digital products than they do with the more like household cleaning products and electronics and household goods and things like that, the non-digital products. So some very interesting findings there. One finding that I will point out is that we asked if people thought that manufacturers were testing digital products for safety. 40% said yes, which was fascinating because, of course, there is no product safety standard for digital products for the most part. Another 40% said they didn't know. And then, the smallest percent said no. So interesting findings there. But this product safety framing automatically conjures up manufacturer. You say product safety, manufacturer comes up. Important. So I'm going to dive a little bit straight into digital product safety and weave in some of these other terms as we go. So with digital products, humans are exposed to these risks, and we covered some of these a little bit earlier. This is going to be a little bit reinforcement. So we have safety hazards and harms from using the product as intended by the manufacturer, including, so there's some examples of ways that digital products can harm us. Unexpected, unintended, undesired personal information sharing. And this is, sharing a product ingredient, really. And then we also can have harms and hazards from product ingredients themselves. And we can have addictive design patterns also baked into the product. I didn't list them here, but that's another one. And so I will point out that when we get into this unexpected, undesired sharing of personal information, this is where privacy, one place where privacy comes in digital products. Another kind of risk we have with digital products is we get hazards and harms from intentional tampering with the product or the ingredients. And that could be, for instance, a data breach. We're all very familiar with and probably victims of data breaches. And this is where cybersecurity comes in. Cybersecurity is a whole discipline that is designed to prevent tampering with the digital product. That's what cybersecurity ultimately is. This also relates to privacy, though. So we've got a couple of terms already popping up here, cybersecurity and privacy, in the context of digital product safety. So this is where I want to disambiguate safety and security. And I'm using some language from Jason Chan. I liked his pithy example. I say this in so many more words in the past. I presented this at RSA in, I don't know, 2022 or 23 maybe. But I like his phrasing better, so I'm borrowing it. Here he says, security protects your product from the world, prevents that tampering. And security here, we're really thinking cybersecurity with digital products. I may interchange these terms, use them interchangeably. In the context of digital products, security is cybersecurity. So it protects your product from the world. Safety protects the world from your product. Well, kind of. Going back to the point that safety is very broad, and yes, it could include the world in it, but I actually think the finer phrasing of product safety protects people from your product. A little bit more precision. I do think that we need to regard holistically, especially in the age of large language models and machine learning and the infrastructure required for that technology, that the world needs protection. Like literally the planet needs protection from some of these products. So there's a place for that and there's space for that. But when we talk about product safety, we're really talking about protecting people from your product. Okay, so the third kind of category of risks, and we've talked about these earlier, is the weaponized use of a digital product. And I've put some examples here like malicious or fake packaged content, technology facilitated gender-based violence, bullying. This list goes on. And this is cybercrime. Okay, so we've gone through privacy, cybersecurity, security, safety, cybercrime. So we've kind of made our way through a lot of the terms, if not all of the terms. And the important takeaway here is that digital product safety is concerned with all of these. So when we think about, there's a piece of cybersecurity, there's a piece of cybercrime, there's a lot of privacy concern that falls within the scope and the sphere of concern of digital product safety. And so I offer to you this, it looks a little off balance, and that's by design, this Venn diagram that tries to illustrate the relationship between these disciplines or domains or lenses, if you will. So product safety includes, an enormous chunk of privacy law, privacy considerations, right? Like it's a big piece of the hazards and harms that are baked into digital products, even without the infiltration and the cybersecurity overlap. But there is an overlap, right, between privacy and cybersecurity, and between cybersecurity and digital product safety. So there's a little tiny segment there, and this I tried to make it meaningful, but it's, take it with a grain of salt, because there are elements of cybersecurity and weaponized use of a digital product that don't have to do necessarily with privacy. So there are deliberate intersections shown here. But the point is that cybersecurity, first of all, is a very mature discipline compared to digital product safety, which I am trying to give birth to in the world, So it's much more nascent. The concept is much more nascent. Cybersecurity has been around for a long time, mostly because it concerns itself with protecting corporate assets. So there's a lot of money that's gone into that, right? And a lot of focus on that. It's mature. There's a lot of work. It's great. Cybercrime has also, I would say, more mature than digital product safety in many ways. Okay, so it's just intended to give you a sense of relationship. And I wanted to contrast this with non-digital products because I think it's helpful. So when we consider non-digital product safety, there's no overlap with corporate security. We don't. I don't think I can't think of an example where we are, concern ourselves with that. And same thing with product assisted crimes. There's very little. I think there is actually, as I'm looking at it, I think there's probably a little bit of overlap in this circle with product safety, but it's very small. I think it's very small. I might just move that just a tiny bit hair into that one. So again, this is to get you thinking about how digital products as a category differ from non-digital products. Okay, so technology governance, how it's going. Well, it's going. There are 725, I think, is what this adds up to, federal laws worldwide on these different kinds of buckets, according to the UN. And in the US, 20 states have privacy laws. And we also have a really a tremendous kind of what's the word I'm groping for? We have a lot of draft bills in progress on a lot of different topics. We have so-called AI, which is, I would argue, ungovernable as a term. Chatbots, ed tech, social media, age-appropriate design code, data portability, child online safety. We have all of these different, many initiatives multiplied by 50 states in the District of Columbia. We have so much repetition, so much inefficiency, and really quite a lot of inconsistency in language in the laws that are being developed. We have done some mapping in our software safety standards panel, which I invite everybody to join, even if you can't participate. We've been meeting since 2019. It's an open standards panel. It's where we define the contents of the safety label and really the safety standard. But we also did some vocabulary evaluation, looking at the definitions in a number of local, state, federal, international laws on AI terminology and so-called AI-related terminology, as well as products and product language and product laws. We have a lot of inconsistency in the language, which is problematic. And a lot of it is so, it's unmeasurable, it's unenforceable, it lacks precision. In the US right now, according to this AI laws by state, there's nearly 2,200 AI-related bills across all 50 states. I mean, I get it, but we have a lot of activity going on, and we are not being efficient. This I would characterize our regulation of digital products as whack-a-mole. Whack-a-mole. Another observation I have is that a lot of the policymakers are disconnected from technical experts who can provide more precision. But that's not happening. And so then we get these imprecise terms and buckets and orientations of these laws. And so we have a whack-a-mole situation. So I want to look a little bit backwards at product safety governance. And again, I'm looking at generic product dangers here, not like shake the Etch-a-Sketch of digital products out of your brain, looking at non-digital products, historical product dangers. And again, we have our innate product hazards and then our product-assisted crimes and weaponization, just for to cover the full spectrum of scope of harms and dangers. And we've talked about these. And these, on the left, these product hazards and harms, they're really a result of the product design. But the weaponization, it's a result of product use. And I'm going to share something here, and just a slight trigger warning. There's some, I'm going to share a couple of recent events, or one recent event that might be a little bit disturbing. Oh, but not yet. First, I'm going to say that for non-digital products, the product design has really limited influence and control over the product use. And there's limited control over weaponization guardrails. Make a note of that for when we compare to digital products. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a couple examples here. So this is the 1960 Corvair. This is the product that had a deficient axle design that caused the car to flip by no fault of the driver of the vehicle. Just to kind of reinforce these ideas of product design versus product use. This is a more recent event, and I only brought it in because it was timely and it was the same. It was the same product, but this is an example of actually using a vehicle to harm people. Okay. What happened here? Okay, so I'm adding in now the governance layer. And when we think about governing, again, just non-digital products, old-fashioned product safety governance, the two primary and original things were governing the organization behavior and really governing human behavior. And in fact, remember from the previous talk, a lot of emphasis goes on to, well, you're using it wrong. Blame the customer. Blame the customer. But there is, of course, a necessary case of governing human behavior for weaponization using a product. These other two facets, governing the product behavior and governing the product ingredients, those really developed as the industrial age went on. And I would say that we got product ingredient governance first because food, obviously, and we got product behavior later with tobacco and which is really kind of product ingredients, but also behavior. That's, the line is fuzzy. And vehicles, automobiles. That's where we really started to see like, we need to have some safety standards of the behavior, of the performance of this product. This is a mechanical product. It is animated in a way and thus behaves not unlike digital products that are animated by software and can behave, but mechanical products can behave. And so this is when we started to really govern product behavior. And so the last piece I'll lay on to this is that on this left side, we really are looking at manufacturer accountability for these things. And over here on the weaponization on the crime side, we're really looking mostly at individual accountability, almost 100% individual accountability. All right. Now we're going to dive into digital product category. So same framing, and we're just going to build up the same thing as we go. So digital product design, is the root of the digital product hazards and harms. And digital product use is how these products are weaponized. However, we have something different with digital products here. The arrow is fatter here to convey the fact that digital product design actually has more influence and control over digital product use than non-digital products. And it also has more discretion and control over weaponization guardrails. Is it perfect? Can it do it perfectly? No, of course not. But it's quite different. And the reason why this is important is when we think about this accountability. And I'm going to really hammer this point home in a moment. But this difference between non-digital products and digital products makes the job of governance harder in many ways. Okay, so governing the manufacturer behavior and governing human behavior, this is part and parcel. This is a lot of the laws that we have already. A lot of them govern both of these things, and in fact, very heavy on manufacturer behavior. A lot of like the privacy by design and a lot of that work, it's really about assessing the corporate behavior. Did you do all the right things? I'm going to say something perhaps controversial now, but ISL deliberately abandoned looking at corporate behavior. When we first started as the Me2B Alliance, we were going to assess corporate behaviors, and we realized really pretty quickly that even if you do everything right, your product still has hazards and harms in it. So looking at the behavior of the organization wasn't actually beneficial or as impactful. It was a fine place to start, but we can't stop there. We really need to be governing the behavior of the product and the product ingredients, the digital product ingredients. And I've made these bigger and a different color by intentionally, because this is where the laws are falling down right now. They do not include enough of this stuff, and they don't frame it in these ways. And what happens is we get throw away an entire harm lawsuit because a digital product ingredient was protected speech, but the overall product maybe was still harmful. So I'm not saying that that's a possibility. And I think one that warrants greater scrutiny. But I do think we are perhaps throwing harmful products away with the bathwater because we don't have the right terminology and precision of how we're going at this. The other peculiarity with digital product safety governance, and by the way, what we have today is not digital product safety governance. It's sort of a hodgepodge. So this title of this slide is a sort of grace that maybe the world doesn't deserve this. We're really not doing an adequate job of, because we're not framing it this way. It's what we have. So the other difference, though, with digital products, we have spent an inordinate amount of time governing user rights. And that comes through with the privacy rights. Has this been effective? I would argue no. I mean, we look at products, we look at the data sharing of products all day, every day at ISL. And I can tell you it's not doing a lot for throttling privacy, breaches of privacy. And we see the number of data breaches also, the infiltration, the infiltration of these digital products. So we've spent really quite a lot of time, and we continue to do a lot of this. I'm just pointing this out. It's an observation. Okay, so the last final thing I want to say about this framing and accountability is, on the left side of this sort of spectrum, we have product liability, and on the right side, we have criminal behavior, right? Those are kinds of the titles that we use for this stuff. It's really not tidy for digital products, and I'm going to give you an example. For non-digital products, like consider a hammer. It's a viable tool for a lot of legitimate uses. And when they're weaponized, the accountability unquestionably falls on the perpetrator who weaponized the hammer. There's no gray area there. Non-consensual notification apps. Though there's no legitimate purpose of this. There's no utility for these kinds of apps. They are only harmful. Should we criminalize the manufacturers of such a product? Should we make certain digital products illegal? So this tidy, accountability formula doesn't work so well. The line is hazier for digital products. So this accountability problem, who or what is behaving hazardously, harmfully, or criminally? Is it the product? Is it a digital product that was synthetically created? This is my geeky way of saying that. It's probably imperceptible, but that's what this second bullet is saying. Is it the user? Is it the consumer of the product? Is it the manufacturer? Again, the questions are, should we outlaw certain types of digital products entirely? Or should we do controlled products similar to controlled substances with chemicals? Should we consider that kind of framing for digital products? Product liability. Product liability is also tricky because of the ingredients, the ingredient mosaic of digital products, right? We've got manufacturers, we've got third-party suppliers, lots of them. We've got purveyors like app stores. What kind of accountability do they have in this? Product liability kind of needs to have a legal person, and of course, a company can be a legal person under the law. But there needs to be someone to be accountable. So if you're noticing that I'm raising more questions than answers, that you're tracking just right. So the last section I want to talk about is who governs digital product safety, or what counts for digital product safety in the US today. So for non-digital products, we do have framing, right? Like the FTC, the FCC, and the FCC for digital products, it's turning out. But the US Consumer Product Safety Commission and the states themselves really play the biggest roles, I would say, in product safety and product liability. For attacks on digital product integrity, we have CISA, we have standards. I mentioned that cybersecurity is a much more mature discipline than digital product safety. So we're a little bit further down the road. We have some institutions and some framing and standards in place. That's excellent. We need that. Product weaponization also, this is historically the Justice Department, local law enforcement, FBI, these kinds of agencies. So my point in exploring these is that this is a lot of disparate organizations trying to achieve digital product safety. It's possible we're making this harder on us than we need to. It's possible. So in summary, the situation that we have with governance is we have this sort of frenetic disjoint proliferation of new, possibly unnecessary regulation, and they're weak on enforceability and measurement. They're heavy on organizational governance and light on product governance, product behavior and ingredient governance. exceedingly light on that. It's this patchwork of enforcers, so it's everyone and no one. And I should say that, you know, they're having some effect. You know, laws are having some effect. I shouldn't present this as so like sort of bleak. The laws are having some effect, especially elsewhere in the world. You know, laws are having some effect. So it's not, you know, everything that we have done has not been for nothing. I think that there is inexperience and discomfort with drafting technically viable regulations to govern digital product behaviors and ingredients. We have got to get more precise. We have got to get technologists to the table. And of course, we're hampered by the pace of digital product innovation. Angeline mentioned this at the beginning. And, you know, I think there's a sense of panic maybe in a way, especially with the large language models that have mushroomed in such a short amount of time, seemingly a short amount of time. Really, it's a much longer time frame. But I think all of this is contributing to perhaps this whack-a-mole, knee-jerk panic, and could product safety governance be a sort of calmer, more systematic approach to this? So next time, what I want to do is really get into the practicalities of this and foundations for practical product safety governance for digital products. I want to talk about product safety as a human right. I mean, I mentioned the rights piece, and that's usually has to do with privacy. And of course, autonomy is now coming into the picture. But I want to talk about product safety as a human right. And I want to get into more specific existing law reuse, how we can reuse these laws. And I want to look at the US and the EU with that. And then I want to talk about governing with precision and how this overlaps with the language and the ontology or ontologies that we are using. And we need to have harmony between the language and the ontologies that are used in law and the language and ontologies that are used in the development of these digital products themselves. And one of the avenues for this is standards. And I'll mention, I think I mentioned last time, perhaps, I'm not sure, but the W3C data privacy vocabulary work is really just a singular example of trying to bridge that language and ontologies between law and technology so that it can be enforceable and precise and effective. So we will do better. And that's it.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I mean, it's just so interesting every time. I mean, I've heard you talk about this stuff before, but I didn't know about all those laws, honestly. About how I mean, diverse it is. There's one thing I did want to ask you because we had a discussion in this committee about safety being for humans, right? For people, and there was at some point a discussion. What about like autonomous AI? You know what I mean? The ones that are like, there's this movement towards like AI. Is it going to have its own emotions or its own? Does that need to be protected? What are your thoughts on that?
No.
I agree with you too. Yeah. I mean, have you had discussions with people about that? Like,
no.
Yeah. Okay.
I've only started to scratch the surface on that a lot, in a lot of different ways, and this goes into consciousness and AGI and a lot of things that are misdirections, kind of, I want to say. Consciousness is referred to as the hard problem in philosophy because nobody can figure it out. It's called the hard problem. And now we have developers. I'm not even giving me software engineers. I'll call them software engineers. Suddenly becoming experts on human consciousness. It's
I do
worrisome.
think it is. I do think it's a little bit, I mean, a little bit, not a little bit, very concerning considering, what you presented now, for example, there's just too much uncertainty about even protecting the basics, like the products. We're not even there yet. And if all of a sudden we start talking about these products as independent beings, I want to say it that way, although it hurts, I feel like this is skipping a step and actually opening a door out towards actual accountability. That's what I feel like the discussion might even be about a little bit.
I think you're absolutely right, and we're already seeing it. And some of the social media cases, when they talk about the algorithm, that the feed algorithm, and is the feed algorithm protected speech, and if so, whose protected speech? That to me is a wedge issue that is extremely disconcerting, and that if we open that door a little bit to grant software protected speech, like, that's problematic for me. I think we need a lot of really thoughtful people from a lot of different disciplines coming together and having deep and serious talks about this stuff, and drawing hard lines and developing hard criteria for, if in my taxonomy of digital products as a category, any autonomous agent that is synthetically produced would be yet another digital product. That's where it lives. It's not a being, but yeah. So we're going to have some very difficult discussions, and we're going to have them soon. And we need all the right people at the table. And this cannot be. As a technologist, I feel like it's okay for me to say this. Technologists should not be in charge of this discussion.
Yeah, that's actually the next thing I was going to say. What needs to happen is an understanding at the right levels of society, and I'm talking governments and mostly governments, to understand that having created a product doesn't make you the best expert on it necessarily. Like the definition of expertise is a serious problem. That's why certain people are being heard more, because we think that their opinions are necessarily more, have a stronger base.
It's so interesting, because one of the things that's been coming up for me in the slide that talks about product design versus product use, another difference between non-digital products and digital products is that body of knowledge, the epistemics, if you will, of digital product use is vast. It's much bigger than for non-digital products. And as such, it's those people who are experts in the digital product use who need to be contributing quite a lot more than just the makers, the technological makers to that discussion. And that's peculiar. That's a peculiarity. Like, you didn't need to, well, maybe you didn't need to have the Hammer experts talking about with you on governance of this. I don't know. It's a little bit different, but yeah, there's definitely something different with digital products, and who counts as an expert, and who should count as an expert, and who needs to be involved in governing the behavior and the ingredients of these things.
I agree. So thank you so much. again for part 2. Watch this space for part 3. We're not sure exactly when it's going to come,
Yeah.
but hopefully soon. And thanks a lot, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you so much.